Where are the others? ఏరి ఇంకా ఉండాలి కదా. పండగ స్పెషలా? వినాయక చవితి అవ్వలే ఇంకా. ఇది చూడండి ఏసీ రావట్లేదు. అచ్చా ఓకే వచ్చు. రెడీ నా? Shall we start? So today I want to discuss couple of topics from various fields and finally connect them all to why these things are happening domestically because of international issue. Okay, the biggest issue that's happening right now is Trump's tariffs and its effect on India's economy. That's the most hot topic. So I will brief you about what would be the effects on India. Why is it happening? Not just the effects, but we will discuss a little background and see why is it actually happening like this. Okay, what are the effects and what are the possible things that we can do right now, because we see the stock markets fall in the last week. So let us discuss all those things. That's the what do I say? That's the end part. But initially, I will discuss couple of topics individually, smaller ones. Okay, so let us start with the first thing of GST. Okay, so 8 states together, they have proposed a plan. You were saying something? No? Okay, so 8 states together, they have proposed a plan to increase GST. Okay, center has already said two things. A latest announcement from the center. First is, you know that there are tax slabs in GST. So, couple of tax slabs from 12% and 28%. Couple of products, it wanted to reduce it to 5% and 18%. So, what's happening here? Suppose a product was 100 rupees. Price of the production cost was 100 rupees. Now, GST was previously was 12 rupees, 12%. So the final cost becomes, this was the final cost of the product previously. Now they want to reduce it to 5%. So what's happening with the new rate? So who is benefiting here? This price drop. Who is benefiting? Consumer is benefiting, because we all know GST is a destination based tax, which means the end user is finally paying the tax amount. Yes, so the consumer is getting benefited. What's happening to the other side of it? So who is getting the GST? The government gets the GST. Now what's happening here? There is a loss of 7 rupees to government's revenue. Yes. So government's revenue is decreasing here. The consumer is getting advantage. Fine. Nothing is happening to the manufacturer because he is paying the GST and he gets the input credit back. So the manufacturer so the manufacturer is fine. The consumer is getting an advantage. Government is losing its revenue. To compensate for it, they want to increase taxes on a certain set of products. Okay. So first thing is that center wants to do reduce these tax slabs. And the second thing is that 40% tax on sin goods and luxury items. Okay. Now, 8 states have requested to put an additional tax. Apart from the 40% tax they want to put on sin and luxury goods, they have proposed additional tax. And why is this? To compensate for this revenue loss. So they don't, end of the day, people's welfare is government's motto. So if the price of a certain product is reducing for a consumer, government wouldn't want to disturb it. But it has to also run. So it needs money. So it will find alternative sources. And one alternative they found is this. Now let us see what are sin goods and what are luxury goods. Okay. So sin goods are those products which have a negative effect on the person consuming these products. Example, tobacco, hookah, alcohol does not come under GST ambit. So is petrol. Alcohol plus petrol. These two don't come under GST ambit. Okay. Now, sin goods. But remember this. Now, what are luxury items? Yeah, it is part of sin goods. It doesn't come under the ambit of GST. That's it. Alcohol is a sin good. Now, what are luxury goods? All those expensive items. See, maybe buying a 10 lakh rupee car is not luxury. It is essential for a middle class family. But buying a luxury sports car worth 2 crore rupees is a luxury. Okay. So those expensive articles like these cars, those branded bags and services. Also services. There are some 5-star saloons. Yeah. So, for example, business class tickets, flight tickets. Tony and Guy has become a necessity these days. It is not a luxury. I'm talking about something like bubbles or okay. So these are these luxury items. Now done. So see, increasing the taxes on luxury items makes a sense to one extent. You feel okay. These are the people who are really rich, can spend any amount of money. So you're trying to take more from them. Yeah. And what is happening to whatever revenue that government is getting? It is being distributed to the needed. Sounds fine. No one has an objection with it. But there is always a moral dilemma looking at it prima facie when talking about sin goods. Okay, so what is this moral dilemma? People would say if only alcohol is that bad to health, if only cigarettes are that bad to health, why are you just making it more pricier, thinking that it is not affordable to people? Why can you not just ban the production? Right? Right? That's the general assumption that we have. Why do you just not ban it? Instead of making 100 rupees to 200 rupees and expecting people not to drink. But we all know for a fact that people will pull that extra 100 rupees, spend 200 rupees, and do finally what they want to do. But the logic behind this thing is yes. So the illegal activity increases because for a fact, people are not leaving these things. The black market increases. So there was this scope of getting some revenue out of the sales that are happening. Now government has lost that, and all the illegal activities, all of them would increase. The black market would increase. Now that is a new burden to the government to manage those things. So instead of banning it completely, what government would do is make it unaffordable to a common man. Increase the prices and make them unaffordable. Maybe there is a little reduction in the consumption that way. Okay, so that's the reason behind still having sin goods being produced and the prices being increased. Okay, so this is about the current thing. Now let us do a little quick recap about the GST. So GST is Goods and Services Tax. This is an indirect tax. Very important. And destination based tax. So why was this introduced in the first place? The main reason is to reduce multiple m- multiple taxes. So what all taxes were consumed by GST? State VAT, state excise duty, central sales tax, service tax, and so on. Okay. So what was happening is the service tax was different in Tamil Nadu when compared to Bihar. So, okay, services fine because each restaurant the service is changing. It's fine. What about the products? Okay, suppose a pen is being manufactured in Noida. Their taxes are low. Let us say the production cost from Noida is 10 rupees for a pen. Okay. In AP, the production cost is 8 rupees. But the taxes here in Noida is only 1 rupee, and the taxes and the state taxes that are happening here is 4 rupees. So what is happening? Final cost of the product here. Now, these two has to compete in the national market. What's happening? One thing. From the consumer side of it, consumer would always want to buy this cheaper product. So he would go here. Second angle of it is you have to use your resources optimally. That's the whole concept of economy, right? Optimal utilization of resources. Now, if someone is able to produce a product for 8 rupees and someone is producing it for 10 rupees, who should be encouraged more? This is more effective. Yes? So, to address problems like this, they have introduced something called as one nation, one tax. So, for the distribution, for the production of a pen, now there is a common tax of 2 rupees in the name of GST. Now, what is happening? This has become 11, this has become 12. Now, again, talk about the national market. Which pen is able to compete well? This one. So, did we encourage the optimal utilization of resources this way? Okay, so that's one thing. So, one is taking off the taxes, reducing multiple taxes. Yeah. And the other one is to prevent this multiple input tax, reduce the, what do you call, taxation being applied at multiple stages. Okay, tax on taxes. So there are two words when you talk about tax on taxes. Tax on taxes. One is called as cess. I'm going little out of the topic because this has come. Let us also discuss that. The other one is surcharge. What are these two things? Both of them are tax on taxes, on top of taxes. Okay. So what is the major difference between these two things? If a cess is collected on a product, on the name of some service, on the name of a particular sector, the revenue that comes, the money that is collected has to be spent on that sector only. For example, when you usually see your bill, you see something called as Swachh Bharat cess. Okay? Swachh Bharat cess. Now say government has collected 1,000 crore rupees for Swachh Bharat cess. Now this 1,000 crore rupees should be utilized only for programs related to Swachh Bharat. This amount cannot be diverted to health because this was collected under the name of Swachh Bharat cess. So what happens with the cess? Specific purpose. Okay. Surcharge is also the same thing. It is also tax on tax. But in surcharge, can be utilized for any purpose. So you understood the difference between these two? Cess, surcharge for a specific purpose, for any purpose. Okay, examples are railway surcharge. You have credit card surcharge. Okay. Say government has collected 5,275 crore rupees of these two things. Now government can spend this amount to health, to education, to anything. Yeah? Yes. So what's the GST doing? It is giving something called as input tax crediting. And what will happen? This will prevent the tax on taxes. So this tax on tax is something that is inherently happening as part of the production. I'll give you an example and show how this is happening. The cess and surcharge, those two tax on taxes are explicitly put by the government for a specific reason. That is intentional. Now, this tax on tax that we are preventing is unintentionally happening. I'll tell you how. Suppose raw material is brought. Okay, digging is happening. From a mine, this raw material goes to unit 1. So this is one factory, raw material from the mines. Okay, now this factory owner is buying it at a cost 1. Let us say 10 rupees. He is buying the raw material. Now here some refining is happening and ores are made. Now these ores, now this is his end product. He is selling these ores at 15 rupees to another factory, unit 2. Here he is doing some welding and making them into a, say, a chair, iron chairs. Now, this chair is sent to shops. From here, the consumer is buying it. Okay. So, from here to there is a lot of value addition happening to the raw material. And then finally comes to the end consumer. Now, previously, huh. So, what was happening is while buying the raw materials, there is some tax that adds up to him at this level. There are some taxes that are laid by the government for this factory. Now this 15 rupees that he has decided also includes this tax component. Yes, that 15 rupees of tax component is included already. Now this is not our final product. This is not what the consumer is finally consuming. No, something else is happening again. Now, again, government has taxes on this factory, the same taxes. So, what is the tax applied upon? 15 rupees or 10 rupees? Because this is his raw material, not this. Now, this 15 rupees already includes taxes, and now we are applying the same taxes on these taxes, tax on taxes. So this is inherently happening. You are understanding? To avoid these things, we have something called as input tax credit in GST, in as part of GST. So now this company, he will exclusively, his tax credit he would apply for this input tax credit. Suppose he has spent 20 rupees on taxes per month. This will be applied in the GST council and he gets this 20 rupees back from the GST council. So his taxes are saved here. Now this person applies for the input tax credit, gets back from the GST council. Finally, the shop, he applies for the GST. He's getting back the GST. Finally, who is paying the amount? Customer is paying the amount. Destination based tax. So who is bearing all the taxes? The end consumer is bearing all the taxes. Clear? So that is what it is. Okay. Now you have three components in GST: state GST, central GST, IGST is integrated GST. You have CGST, IGST, IGST. I is not international. This center, this state, anagani international and rayadu. It is integrated. What do I mean by integrated? Interstate. In our previous example, a pen is being manufactured in Andhra Pradesh but is sold throughout the country. Okay, so what's happening here? The raw material is brought from it is maybe coming from Andhra Pradesh or from any other state. Okay, now who is getting the input tax credit? That state government is getting it. Unit 2 is in a different state. Unit 3 is in a different state. Yes, end consumer is in a different state. So what's happening here? The input tax credit is going to different states on the same product. To align all those things, you have a separate component, something called as integrated GST, making sure that the destination state will finally bear all the taxes. This pays the taxes. Okay. So you have CGST, SGST and IGST. Now, what are the different tax slabs that you have so far? 0%, 5%, 12%, 18%, 28%. These are the 5 slabs. Okay. And so, what is the article? 279A. As per this article, GST Council. So, this is a constitutional body. Which was, this article was introduced through 101 Constitutional Amendment Act. Year and GST is implemented from July 2017. Okay. Article 279A was introduced into Indian Constitution through 101 Constitutional Amendment Act. Okay, so GST Council is a constitutional body. Who heads the GST Council? Union Finance Minister. Okay, Union Finance Minister heads the council. Who are the members of this GST Council? So here there is a clause. State finance ministers, or it says ministers of in charge of finance. Okay, revenue ministers or ministers of in charge of finance, any other minister as proposed by state government. So what's our important clause here? These are your traps in prelims questions. Not compulsorily him. If a state decides to have home minister as part of representing that state in GST council, yes, it is legally possible. Okay. Now, GST is something that is affecting the revenue of both the center and states. So, it is important to maintain the federal structure of the nation. So, certain rights have to be given even to the states. Center shouldn't be able to individually take any decisions on important subjects like these. So, that's the reason these members have a different weighted voting system. This is how final decisions are made, through weighted voting system. So the center gets 1/3. The value of their voting is 1/3, while all states together have 2/3. So this is by value. That is their voting value. Okay. Now, for any resolution to be passed, you should have a majority of 3/4 majority for any resolution to be passed. So what does this mean? If center wants it and states are not supporting, 3/4 is not met. Even if all the states go against the center, they want to do it, this 2/3 majority is not enough. So the state and the center have to come to a consensus for anything to be changed in under the purview of GST. That is how it is made. Okay. Done. We'll go for the next topic. Now, PM Modi is visiting. No, even before that, 29th and 30th, Japan, Tokyo. So they have come up with something called as Memorandum of Cooperation for integrated carbon emission. Okay. So what is this whole concept of integrated common emissions, carbon emissions? So they call it as a joint emission mechanism. So we will see what all of this carbon emission is, what is, okay, what is, what do you call this carbon credit, what is the trading system. We will see all those things now. Okay, this is the background. Recently, Modi has signed this memorandum of cooperation with Tokyo for joint emission mechanisms. Okay, we will see what all of this are. Okay, so as part of Paris Agreement has happened in Paris Agreement of 2015 under Article 16 of North Indian Constitution. Okay, under Article 16, there is something called as car, car, carbon emissions. 16 అమ్మా 6 అంటావా చెక్ చేస్తాను I'll check. I think it is, we will check. Article 6 of Paris. Article 6 is frameworks for international cooperation to meet climate targets, particularly via carbon markets. Let us see what is 16. 16 talks about COP and the UNFCCC. So under UNFCCC, I'll tell you. UNFCCC. This is United Nations. United Nations. F. Framework on Convention of Climate Change. Okay. So under this, all the countries have come up with something called as NDCs. What are NDCs? Nationally determined contributions. Okay. Why this whole concept has come in the conference of parties is, see, if you take history, go back to couple of decades, what has happened, a country like British were well advanced from a very long time back. They had their factories in the third world countries like Africa, India. All the manufacturing, all the extraction of resources, the labor, the factories were placed in India. Only the final product was taken into their land and sold there at a certain price. Okay, that is with Britishers. What is happening with America? America, as soon as American Revolution has happened, they started industrialization. Okay, there was a rapid growth. They put up so many factories and industries in America and started developing a long time back when compared with other countries like China and India. After America, a country like Japan, Korea, part of Korea, so they were a little ahead of us. China and India started very late. There are few countries which are still striving. Developing countries, developed countries. So apart from the type of resources they have, apart from the government policies there is also this historical factor, because industrialization or this development started at different stages of history in different countries. Now, because America is already developed, they're self sufficient in so many things. They talk about climate change. Okay, American president denies the concept of global warming. That's a different thing. But let us say developed countries, the targets cannot be same for developed countries and developing countries, because the burden that developing countries take is so much more different. కడుపు నిండిన తర్వాత కదా ఇంకా బెటర్మెంట్ గురించి ఆలోచించగలిగేది. We are still trying to fill our stomachs. Yes, so that's the reason they have come up with something called as nationally determined contributions. So I will decide how much I can contribute to this climate change, to reduce the impact of climate change depending on my economy. So this was done as part of UNFCCC, as part of Article 16 of Paris Agreement that happened in 2015. Okay, that's the reason this nationally determined, because it cannot be same. It is not fair for developing countries to compete with developed countries to reach the same targets. They already have the technology. They already have those huge investments. It is easy for them to adopt low carbon emission technologies. But that is not possible to a country like India or Sri Lanka or Bangladesh. Okay. So here, because we talked about NDCs, let us also see what are the 4 nationally determined contributions that India has proposed. Okay. So what are they? One is net carbon zero by the year 2070. So what do I mean by net carbon zero? Suppose 3 billion tons of carbon is getting emitted every year. I should also have a carbon sink of 3 billion tons of carbon. So the amount that is emitted is synced back. Net zero. So finally, what is released into the environment? Nothing. Zero. By 2070, by the year 2070. Okay? And increase the forest cover or tree cover. Okay? To 2.5 billion to 3 billion additional carbon sink by, we have to create that much. We have to be able to create. Now, whatever is happening. Today's rate, it's there. You have to create an additional this much of carbon sink by the year 2030. Okay. And then other thing is 50% of non-fossil fuel energy capacity by 2030. 50% of, do you know what is the current rate? How much is the non-fossil fuel? around 48. We're good there. Okay. So out of the total energy consumption that's happening in the nation, 50% has to come from non-fossil fuels. Okay, I hope you know the difference between fossil fuels, non-fossil fuels, renewable energy, non-renewable energy, clean energy, green energy. They're all different. So see what's the tiny difference. When you're writing your answers, it is really nice if you are able to write points mentioning these words in that specific way. It would impress the examiner. So learn those differences. Okay. 50% of non-fossil fuel energy by 2030. Okay. And the fourth target is reducing the emission capacity. So reducing the emissions by 45%. Whenever I'm saying by 45%, there has to be a base year. In comparison to what? In comparison to 2005 levels, it has to be reduced by 45% by the year 2030 when compared with 2005 levels. Okay, say by 2005, 100 tons of carbon was emitted in 2005. Now 45 tons of it has to be reduced by 2030. Okay. These are the NDCs that in, so these are really important. You just have to remember them because to substantiate your points, you will keep using this data into your answers. So you have to just remember these four things. Okay. Now, what is this carbon credit trading system, that this whole thing? So about the memorandum, it is about the carbon credit trading system. So let us see what this is. Okay. Suppose there is factory 1. Okay. And there is factory 2. There are two factories in two different fields. Doesn't matter. Same field, different technologies. Okay. Now there is a cap that they have to emit only 100 tons of CO2 every year. This is decided by the national government. This is the cap. Suppose this factory emits 60 tons. Okay. And this factory emits 150 tons. Now, the target was, so they are doing good. These people exceeded by 50 tons. They have exceeded the limits. Now, the concept is to reward to someone and to penalize someone who is exceeding the targets. So how is that happening? Is you have this credit trading system. So what's happening here? This 40 tons will be sold to this country for an amount. So this on paper is sold to that company. Now what is their net emission? 10 tons. Understanding? So this is the credit trading that is happening. They have emitted less, they have emitted more. Now that whatever is left, whatever they have successfully reduced, can be sold to a company who are overdoing it. These people are rewarded. Now whatever this money, now the credit, the carbon credit is going to factory 2, money is coming to factory 1. These people are rewarded. This is the advantage that they are getting. These people are penalized. This is the fine they are paying. Overall, government wants 200 tons, 100 and 100. What is the government getting overall? 110, 210. So what is the net emission? 10 tons. Okay. So that is what it is. So this is the concept of carbon credit trading system. Now I have given an example of 2 factories. Now the memorandum that has happened is in between 2 countries, in between Japan and India. So what is happening here? Japan will invest in India, and this concept of investment, low carbon emission technologies. Okay, this investment capital can go to machinery, equipment. Your understanding, it can be manufacturing of any product. Okay, this can be anything. But what is the key? Low carbon emission technologies is the key. That is what they have to invest in. So, what will happen? Now, India will do 2 billion, let us say, and saving 1 billion of carbon emissions. 1 billion tons of carbon emissions is saved by India because of the new technology, new manufacturing. So what is the advantage to Japan? This 1 billion carbon credit will be traded to Japan. Because Japan, is a very industrialized country. So what is Japan saving? 1 billion. What is India getting? What is the advantage to India? Investments, more manufacturing, jobs, GDP, etc., etc., etc. Mutual benefit. Okay, so that's the whole thing behind this Modi's Japan meeting. One thing, one reason behind Modi's Japan meeting. So this is what they have done so far. Done. Okay, so the time is 12:26. Okay, so I'll quickly give you an overview of what is this tariff thing and why this all of a sudden Japan meeting, and then with China, why is India looking for alternatives? I want to give a brief overview. If we still have some time left, I will discuss couple other topics. Okay, so let us see what's happening here. See, America, whenever the party changes, Democrats, Republicans, so they have a completely different strategy on how to deal with the global politics. They completely flip. Okay, the nation's perception towards these international policies, the diplomacies completely change. So that is what is happening presently. Since the time that Trump has become the president. He's changing so many things all of a sudden. See, Trump is under the impression that whatever products are being manufactured in America are sent to other countries at very low tariffs. Tariffs as in taxes that are applied on exports and imports of certain goods in between countries. So that is what I mean by tariffs. Now, American products are sent at a tariff of 5%, 10%, 15% maximum to various countries. So, American goods are, no, sorry, they are coming in, the imports are coming in at lesser tariffs, 5%, 10%, 15% maximum, less with less tariffs. They are coming from outside nations. Let it be something like Japan, South Korea, or a developing nation like Bangladesh or Sri Lanka. But this tariff component is very less when the products are dumped into the US market. But when the American products are going out of America, the exports, the tariffs that various other countries are putting on US products are more. Okay. So here I'll give you an example and explain to make it clear. Now, country one is exporting, value of the product is 100 rupees, and this they have a tariff of 10 rupees. Now the product cost is 110 rupees in the destination country. Okay. Now, let us say from the same country, they are sending some other good. And this import tax is only 5%. Okay. This is the same country. Now, US feels that their products are cheaper in other countries, are costlier in other countries. So they have less market for their products. Because of their low tariff rates, this 5% of low tariff rate, other country products are cheaper in American market. So there is more market for imported items in America. So that is a loss to the manufacturers in the US. To promote their domestic manufacturing, to promote their local markets, he is increasing this taxes. This 5% of whatever is going in is changed. Initially, he made it 25%, asked India to change this. If you want to change it, I will increase further, which he did on couple of products, not all of them. He did not just to India, but also to many other countries. Okay, to US, you have very pro-US nations like South Korea, like Japan. They are pro-US. They have reduced their tariffs. They did because they don't want to compete with, they don't want to challenge US. The reason is US economy, their culture is a spending culture. It is the largest consumer market. Okay, US is largest consumer market. Their spending is very high. So countries cannot lose this market. It is very important. You are manufacturing products, good. Where are they going? There is only a limited sub demand in the nation that is met. What are you doing with the excess products? They have to go. They have to be exported. So US is a very major market that way. So many countries have reduced this, but India didn't. That's the reason he did a second phase of it and made it 50%. Here you have to observe few things. What are the products on which the tariff is increased. He increased it for textiles. Yeah, textiles and apparel. He didn't do it for pharma. He did not do it on pharmacy products. Why did he do it on pharmacy products? Because India is one of the pharmacy hubs of the world. We are one of the cheapest suppliers of medicines. If only he is increasing on pharma, the health sector of US would get affected. He cannot afford that. But he is doing it on textiles. Why? You already have countries like Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Vietnam. Now, with these increased tariffs on India, the same product of 100 rupees, now India has a tax of 50. So Indian product is becoming 150 rupees in American market, in the US market. And from here, it is going only for 110 rupees into the US market. Now, what is happening to Indian goods? Okay. So, what is he saying? The reason behind this tariff increase and all, his logic is you stop taking oil reserves from Russia. Okay. Because before the Ukraine war, the amount of oil, the crude oil that India was buying from Russia, from 2%, it has increased to 35 to 40% now. Whatever India is buying from Russia has increased. So this huge scale that is there. So the background story here is in the Russia Ukraine war as well as India Pakistan war. So what has happened? Donald Trump has become K.A. Paul for a while. So he said, I negotiated the deal. I was the one to stop the war because of this Global Peace Prize award. So he said, I brokered the deal. What happened here? In case of India and Pakistan, Pakistan agreed. They didn't say no. But India publicly rejected. It said Trump was not part of the deal. It was our sovereign decision. Now his ego is hurt. Pakistan has to agree because they are militarily aligned with the US because America is a non-member of NATO, East Asian Treaty Organization. Yeah. So Pakistan is always indirectly militarily dependent for the fundings. It also gets investment from the US. It has military support from the US because if it in this case of India Pakistan, if US has to support, who do you think India would support? US would support. They would support Pakistan. So to have the support of US, Pakistan agreed, but India didn't. Okay, now he has this in this mind. How does he take this out? We know that ever since enmity between USSR and US. Now India is buying a lot of oil reserves from Russia. See, the thing with India is we import almost 85% of our crude oil. We don't have the reserves. 85% imports is a very huge number of crude oil. Yeah. So, major imported product. Now, alone from Russia, it was 2%. Out of this has now become 40%. What is the problem that US has here? India is buying it for $60 per barrel. We have the refineries. We are buying crude oil. We have the refineries. We are making diesel, petrol, CNG, LPG, yeah, compressed natural gas, liquefied pressure gas, and then selling it in international markets for $108 a barrel, because we have the, so all of this is going to countries like Sri Lanka. How much profit does India has here? Very huge on each barrel. Okay, so it wants us to not buy oil from Russia. But why will we not buy? Because Russia is our time tested ally, not like US. You have something, am I? Not like US. Huh? Not like US. Because see, if US has to support in between India and Pakistan, US would support Pakistan. If US has to support between India and China, no, it would support India. You understand? So you call it as an all-weather ally. So whatever is happening, we always had the support of USSR to Russia. Okay? So just because US is pressurizing about something under the name of Ukraine war, it is putting on sanctions, we will not go back on Russia. Point one. Point number two, they see, from the economy point of view, I want to buy my raw materials only at a cheaper price. Why will I want to spend more? I want more profits. Good for the nation. So I will buy from a market, from a cheaper market. Russia is providing that. So economically speaking, why should we not buy oil from Russia? And just because the US is threatening, why should we turn against an ally like Russia? We have a lot of defense support, technology support from Russia. We cannot forego all of this. Okay? So that's one part of it. So we know how are all these Chinese goods very cheap in the international markets, because they have natural resources, they have technology, they have the manpower. Because of these three things, all the production happens at large scale. You have something called as economy of scale. That is, there is a lot of advantage for you and a reduction in the production cost when you are manufacturing the same item 10,000 units when compared to manufacturing the same item 100 units. So it is called as economy of scale. When done in very large quantities, there is an advantage of where of a maximum reduction in production cost. That is what is happening in China. That is the same reason why a very small country like Japan could compete with US. US were developed well before Japan. The land size is big, their natural resources are big, their technology is nice. But how could Japanese products compete? just because of this economy of scale, large scale production. So is the case with China. Chinese products are able to compete in international markets, even with the products coming from all the developed nations. Okay. So what is happening? Now the US market is so much dependent on Chinese products. They cannot entirely ban Chinese products. China, especially countries like China, countries like Japan, when they are hugely dependent on exports, they cannot lose their international markets. So if US says something, they will abide to it. That's the reason in between the US China talks, China agreed to the deals of US and they have reduced their tariffs because US needs Chinese products, China needs the US market. So they have agreed, no problem. When coming to India, we did not agree. That's the problem. Because of this reason that we haven't agreed it with the US has increased the tariffs. Now there is a lot of impact of this tariff rise on Indian economy, including the stock market, including the investments. So what are we doing right now? We are looking for alternative markets. If not the US market, what are the alternate markets that we can find? Okay. One thing. Second thing, you remember this scenario? They have made it 50%. So our 100 rupees product has become 150. Their product is going for 110. Now, what if I decrease my production cost, okay, to 50 rupees? 50 rupees, my production cost, 50 rupees taxes. What is the Indian product in US market? Is there demand? But very difficult and doesn't happen in a day. Is it possible? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. We need better technologies. It is possible to reduce the production cost. So, what all are included in production cost? Yes. So, tax is a component. That is why the reduction in GST. Yeah. We need better technologies to reduce. That is why these deals with Japan. Making sense? So, that is how it is. Everything is interrelated. And why Japan visit all of a sudden? Why China visit? See, India is also looking for markets in China. India is also looking for many collaborations with China. We know how there is a little tension with the borders when compared to India and China. There is always competition of Indian goods and Chinese goods in international markets, one part of it. And then we have banned something like TikTok. Okay, this tussle is also happening on the other side. But then India is doing something called as a smart diplomacy. We don't want to fight with China right now. For us to be an ally with the China is more beneficial. We never want to fight with China. We never wanted. Even now, it is more advantage to India to have China as friend, to take China as a support in terms of raw materials, in terms of technology, rare earth minerals. We have already discussed how China is controlling the market of rare earth minerals. So we need all this support from China. One part of it. We are doing so many deals. We want to do so many deals with Japan. Actually, in the Indian stock markets, there are a lot of Japanese investments. We usually talk about US investments, but there are also really high Japanese investments in India. That's already there. Now, if we suddenly go to China. We are always friends with Japan. So this whatever economic dealing is happening is already happening from a very long time. Now, if India suddenly goes to China, how is India and Pakistan? So is China and Japan. Okay. I am friends with Japan till now, taking the technologies, taking their investment. Now, if I suddenly go to China, Japan will doubt us. But we need China also. We need Japan also to be able to tackle the Trump's issue. So, to tell Japan that we are still in good terms with you, we are looking for further investments from you, to reassure that going to China doesn't mean we are dumping US, dumping China. Modi first made a visit to Japan, then he will go to China. After all of this, next month he will do a bilateral meeting with US. US, he's also going to US. So before the next month's US meetings that will be held in September, he has done a strategic meeting with the Japan, and then to China, and finally to US. So if only India is able to broker really good deals with the Japan and China, and show US that it will be still able to compete in international market with the help of other countries, and it is not completely dependent on US might. So that's the smart diplomacy that India is playing. That's the reason, let it be PM Modi, let it be the external minister Jaishankar, no one is criticizing Trump as of now. They say the tariffs are bad on Indian economy, but they are not exclusively criticizing them, because they want to still talk with the US. Understanding? But then Jaishankar has made it very clear that we will not compromise on our energy security. We will still import crude oil from Russia. We need that. He made that part very clear. We are sovereign about that. Only this message is made clear. But they're not criticizing the tariffs. Understand? Got a clarity on what's actually happening here? So that's the thing. See, it is not all what it actually looks. Okay. The reasons that they quote externally are always different from what's actually happening behind. There are multiple reasons that one thing happens. It's not just that one reason that they're quoting. There are so many other things. There is a diplomatic approach to it. There's an economic approach to it. There are so many things. Jaishankar has also, the external minister, he has also stated that whatever India buys from Russia in 1 month is the same as what Europe buys in 1 week. If only US's problem is we buying oil from Russia, shouldn't there be more sanctions on Europe also? Because even Europe is buying. But are they putting any sanctions there? No, because the US UK friendship, we all know about it, about the European countries. So there is also something called as what do you call the oil imports are done through two ways. One is through pipeline, the other one is through ships. So there is a cap on pipelines and not through ships. So there is restricted trade that is happening through pipelines, and n amount of trade that is happening through ships. That is how Europe is able to manage. Shall we do one more small topic? We will do a very lighter one because I know this is all too heavy. But you understood the concept of it now? We will do one from environment. Okay, here you have something called as invasive alien species. So these are coming up in news again and again. Okay, there is a recent report, okay, a global report that says the cost or the loss incurred because of invasive alien species, not us, is incurred $2 billion per annum globally. This is the recent report. This value is very huge, and this is the first scientific survey that has happened and the first data that was ever released. Okay? Sorry, trillion. For a period of 60 years, globally, there was a loss of $2 trillion. I will, so just note down this data. I will tell you individually what each of it is. And then finally, we will come back to this slide and it will make sense. Okay? Now, in any habitat is, so you have something called as native species, you have foreign species, foreign or alien, not from other planet, but from the same planet, but or natural, not natural in this habitat. So we are talking about both flora and fauna. Flora ante plants. Fauna is, okay, I'm talking about both. So there is something called as native, local. డీసీపీలు ఏసీపీలు వచ్చిపోతూ ఉంటారు కానీ నేను లోకల్. ఆ వచ్చిపోయే వాళ్ళందరూ ఫారెన్. వచ్చి పోతే ప్రాబ్లం లేదు, వచ్చి ఉండిపోతే పుష్పలాగా. ఓకే, సో వచ్చి ఉండిపోతే దెన్ దే బికమ్ ఇన్వేజివ్ alien species. So you understand the difference? There is always this intrusion into any habitat. You cannot stop. There is always an intrusion. But when they become threatening, in what way? They become threatening in damaging the native species. Maybe the number is reducing. Maybe they're causing more diseases. So that is the loss we are talking about. if this loss is quantified. Till now, till 2015, still the mid of 2010s, we never talked about quantifying anything that is happening in the environment. Okay? Only past 2 decades, we are quantifying everything one by one. We talked about the emissions, the tons of emissions. We are talking about temperature, specifically in degrees. What is the rise? What is the fall? We are also now quantifying what is the economic loss that is happening because of invasive alien species. So this is the latest. Okay, so what's happening? So you understand what is the loss that is incurred because of this invasive alien species? $2 trillion over a period of 60 years. So from 1960s till 2020s. So here you have to understand what has happened in 1960s. There would have been very much lesser data. Now you have a lot of statistical tools to calculate, to quantify, and more especially something like this, it is difficult to give a value. A particular species is lost forever. It has become extinct. So what is the value that you're going to put for the loss? Difficult to quantify. And there will be, we are talking globally. So from the data being collected also, there is going to be a lot of difference. From a developed country, maybe you are getting very good data. Maybe from an underdeveloped country, the data is limited. So there are also high chances. And we are also talking about 1960s. So how much data do we have from there? There are definitely a lot of gaps in this report, but we are quantifying the losses. That is more important. Okay, so I'll give you a couple of examples of invasive alien species in India. Anyone? Yes, now it is called, now they changed its name. అలహాబాద్ ప్రయాగరాజ్ లాగా దానికి కూడా పేరు మార్చి Prosopus juliforarki, they changed the name. Now it is, okay, just check it. Okay, just check it. The first part of it is changed. Okay. Um, you have something called as Japanese knotweed. Okay, that's an invasive alien species. Congress grass antar, that's different. Congress grass is different. That is called, that is its scientific name is Parthenium. That's Congress grass, also called as carrot grass. Okay, even that's an invasive alien species. So what is this? So what happens in this invasive alien species is, for example, Congress grass, it is not good for your lungs. The air that is emitted out of it is not good for lungs. You have something called as Sarkarutumma in AP and Telangana. Sarkarutumma antar telsa, government. Yeah. No, that is different. I don't think so. I'll check and get back. It's a plant which like spread all over the Andhra and Telangana. Like it is like a parasitic plant. It brought some what is it called? Brazil. అదే నేను చెప్పేది సర్కారు తుమ్మ అంటారు ఆ ముల్లకంప చెట్టు ఉంటుంది చూసారా దట్ థింగ్ సో దట్స్ thorny bushy okay which is suitable for tropical weather. It was literally, you know, the seeds were thrown from the helicopters. Okay, the problem with it is the root system is so strong, it goes so deep into the soil, it absorbs a lot of groundwater, causing a lot of groundwater depletion. So our groundwater resources are lost. That's the loss incurred. Okay, and you call it invasive when it grows multifold, uncontrollable growth. That is when you call it invasive. Okay. So they said Europe and North America. Wait, we'll just confirm. Huh. Yes, that Prosopis julifora is now named as Neltuma julifora. Neltuma. It's renamed as Neltuma. So this is the so this is native to us. Sorry, it is the problem to us. We are actually you have something called as Japanese knotweed. These are national problems. Okay. So according to the report, countries like Europe and North America have incurred highest losses. Asian and African countries are okay. But might be there is a lot of gap in data collection. They are developed countries, maybe they have more data and less data from the underdeveloped countries. Maybe that's one of the reasons. Okay. Now, about the invasive alien species, what can you do about them? Now you have identified the problem. So what is the next thing that you can do? First thing, prevention is better than cure. So what is the first thing? Prevention. So these are alien species coming from a different place. So the concentration has to be transboundary. Yeah, coming from one place to other place, one nation to other nation. So if you have traveled abroad, you would know there is a restriction on taking seeds. Even seeds, small plants, herbs are not allowed into other countries. They're checked as part of customs. The reason? Invasive alien species. మన అత్తలేమో తిట్టుకుంటారు నేను నా కొడుక్కి నువ్వులు పట్టుకెళ్తే వీళ్ళకి ఏమైంది యుఎస్ కస్టమ్స్ లో తీసి ప్యాకెట్ అంతా పడేశారు సో దే డోంట్ allow seeds because they don't want invasive alien species spoiling their ecology, spoiling their biodiversity. Okay. So there are also certain countries which are very strict that they would also make you remove your shoes, sanitize them, give them back after the security check to make sure no new bacteria is entering their country. Because invasive alien species can be anything, starting from microorganisms to plants to animals. Okay, there is a clear restriction of trade of animals, very easily manageable. But something like plants, seeds, bacteria becomes the main challenge. Okay, even International Maritime Organization, IMO, it is recently in news for a couple of things. So I want you to read about IMO. Not prominent previously, but recently in news for a couple of things. Okay, so read about IMO. They have made about ships. You have something called as ballistic water. So whenever ships are traveling, it sucks in some water from the ocean to balance its weight for the displacement, to maintain the displacement. Now, after a certain amount of time, this water that is taken in is pumped out. Okay, new water is taken in. Now, when this taking in is happening, the plants any life, animal life that is there are also sucked in. Now ships are traveling from one ocean to other ocean, totally across continents. Now something is picked up from Atlantic Ocean, dropped into Pacific Ocean. We don't know what's the effect. Okay, it is an alien species there. We never know when it is going to turn into invasive alien species. So they have brought up new norms on how this water has to be released. There has to be filtering mechanisms. Only after that, the water can be released into the new waters. So many new laws, rules, and conventions are coming up. Okay, so also read about IMO. This is prevention. Okay, you have, so this has done ballast water management convention. Yes. Okay. Now the first step is preventing. Okay. Somehow it came in. So what is the next step? Control. Because that's the problem. And finally, eradicate. Okay. Any doubts? Shall we wind up? That's it.